To ask you.
James, did you share the outline with me? Okay, we ready to do this thing?
I'm ready.
All right. Hi, and welcome to the SaaSOps show, episode number 4. Fourth episode. Today we will be reflecting on the continued work from home pandemic situation, and we'll also be chatting about what certifications and conferences we think as IT people are worth it. We figured we'd talk about this topic because it's kind of relevant. A lot of a lot of conferences are canceled or reimagined as virtual experiences now. And there's obviously a lot of cons to go with that, but there are some pros too. So we'll talk a little bit about that.
Thanks, Brian. I'm Justine, and we are also joined by Rose today, who is one of our most active members in the SaaSOps community, including Better IT, the Slack community, which if you haven't joined yet, please join. Rose, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thanks, Justine. I'm Rose Layton, and we're also joined today by my cat, O'Malley, who has taken this moment to decide that he loves me forever. I'm a strategic technology partner at Strata Education Network, which is a nonprofit that works in higher education, government, and employers to help people build more meaningful paths between education and the work that they do. Right, so that encompasses a wide variety of things. But then what I do for them is I'm a SaaS administrator full-time, and then I also do project management, change management, and IT strategy.
I know that you often work from home, so you're probably used to this whole thing, whereas Brian and I are not really so much. And I often, when this first started, I saw a lot of people being like, I've been working from home for years, like everyone catch up, blah, blah, blah. Do you have any tips or things that you've learned along the way, and knowing that this is a very special situation where we also just literally can't leave our houses? Any tips or tricks about working from home, keeping yourself sane?
I mean, I can't provide any tips that anybody else isn't already going to give you, but I would say the most important thing when you start working from home is to figure out your boundaries. So, not everybody has a home office. Some people have to work from their kitchen tables. Some people have to work in their living rooms, whatever it is. I have this light that illuminates my face when I'm on Zoom meetings. And when the light is on, it's work time. And when the light is off, it's not work time. And so even if I decide to work from the couch, if I decide to work from somewhere else in my apartment, the light is on. And so that's what that means. And I actually relish in getting up to turn it off at night. So, whatever that looks like for you, right? Some people have to do very tangible things, and some people can put more sort of mental boundaries around things. You can block out both sides of your calendar with check your email and close it out. And, or you can shut doors, wall off your space, do the light, all those things. So, but boundaries, I think, are the most important thing because they help you mentally separate yourself from work and home, but then they also help you with your coworkers, your family, your spouses, your pets. Not that always works. They help them, recognize that you're not there the same way that you normally are.
Yeah, that's really interesting about turning off the light and then feeling this wave of getting out of work wash over you. For me, that used to be when I was commuting home, whenever I went over the Manhattan Bridge, I was like, oh yeah, okay, cool. Now I can just relax, chill. So I don't have that anymore. So I need to find my own light.
I'll say it's a big adjustment, learning not to commute. I used to do a lot of stuff during my commute. And so then as I slowly transitioned to one day a week from home, 2 days a week from home, all the way to 3 days a week from home, which is where I was before COVID. I was losing so much time for activities. So, I make space for that stuff too, because I think a lot of people do a lot of things, right? They check the news, they meditate sometimes they just listen to music, they read a book, whatever you're doing during your commute, you have to find space for it too. So, because that's all mental health time that you were spending on yourself that now you're not.
Yeah, for sure. I have to make sure to make more time to read now because commuting was always my reading time when I was on the train.
This is the same for me. I was trying to think the other day, like when the last time I finished a book was, and I think it was the last time that I actually took the subway to work, which was not recent. So that was very sad. And do you now, do you work, are most of your coworkers or all of your coworkers also normally remote or work from home people?
Some of them are and some of them aren't. I have the strategy team and the security team on the IT team are both remote flexible positions, so we can work from home pretty much as much as we want. And then the help desk team is usually only remote 1 day a week. And actually, one of our offices, the team that works in one of our offices, they hadn't been remote hardly at all. Um, just on days where they had to pick up kids early from school or they had a doctor's appointment or something like that. That was the only time they'd ever been fully remote. So it was a little bit of a culture adjustment when the whole team was suddenly all remote all the time. We definitely had to get a little bit better at talking to each other. So
Yeah, I was
I
gonna.
think when you do it ad hoc, people just wait, right? Like they're just like, it's the same thing with tickets. Like people are like, oh, like it's fine. I'll just wait till I'm in the office next. But when you don't know when that's going to be, then it's a much bigger question.
Yeah, I also know, like, I've read a fair amount of experiences of people who've worked remotely, and a lot of times their happy, not necessarily their happiness, but a lot of the times their effectiveness of the team as a whole is also kind of dependent on how many people are actually remote versus how many people are in the office, and whether there's a culture around that. Because what can happen, all of those like side conversations that happen in the office, people who are on your mind because you see them in person, it's really easy for somebody who's working remotely to feel excluded or like cut out of the conversation unless you really actively try to bridge that gap. Or if you're right now we're all remote, or if normally you're pretty decentralized, I think that might be a little bit easier. But have you seen, like, have you had any strategies on kind of dealing with that type of stuff?
I think it really depends on every team's culture. Our team is a very discombobulated team that was sort of Frankensteined from a couple of different IT teams, and it's taken us a while to learn to work together really, really well. And but I think it's actually helped. So because we were already distributed like across multiple offices and across multiple locations, we already needed all of the skills it takes to work remotely. But one thing I'll say is, like, we don't get a lot of non-work time with each other anymore. So like we don't get to go to lunch together, and we don't, get to hang out outside of work ever, which is something that we did a lot of before. And so we implemented Donut to do the coffee meetings, random find coffee meetings with teammates. We had some team happy hours. We have them every couple of weeks or so. We've even done a team lunch. We've done, a bunch of different things and it almost, like, at first it was like, should we force it? But it's not force. Like, you're just replacing the effort that it took to see somebody every day, right? So all of those, like, hey, want to grab lunch kind of situations that would happen in the office, like, we had to overcome the idea that we were forcing it by creating opportunities for virtual stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. I think people probably underestimate how much of our human social interaction happens when we go into the office and go to work. We all like to complain about open offices and, having to commute every day, but it feels very isolating to be working from home all the time.
Yeah. And sometimes you just got to give people the opportunity, right, to be social, even if they don't know that they need it. So, and I think that was the purpose behind the team deciding to do these things.
Yeah, and the other side that the topic of how to disengage, um, I found myself now more recently. It's not so much that I have a hard time starting or stopping at the beginning of the day, but it's more that I find that it's been 6 hours and I haven't gotten up from my chair. And it actually took one of my coworkers. I had a meeting with him, and I was like, "Hey, do you mind if I eat during this? Because I haven't like gotten 15 minutes free in the past like 4 hours." And he was like, "Dude, we can reschedule this meeting. Like, take like a second, and take like a half an hour or an hour, and just like chill out, like chill out. Like, we'll talk later." It's like, no, it's fine. I'm just gonna eat my sandwich.
I totally get it, because lunches were hard for me because I have trouble, like when I'm in the focus, I'm focusing, I'm not thinking about what's going on. And so lunches were hard for me before I started working from home, and now it's even worse, right? Because not only do I have to go get lunch, but where I live, I probably have to make myself lunch, which is not an attractive prospect all of the time. So I have to think of some clever tricks to get myself to eat sometimes.
Yeah, lunchtime for me is very sacred. Every time someone tries to book a meeting with me during my lunchtime, I'm like, no way.
No way.
Let's reschedule.
Well, and I have an app to block out my lunchtime now. So at least I know I have a solid hour of the day. It's just mentally convincing myself that I don't need to use that hour to like try to accomplish something.
Yeah. Definitely get a little Zoom fatigue. It's funny, the human interaction that I crave is like still trying to figure that one out, when it's like, well, I've been on a call with people for the entire day basically, and yet somehow I really need, I feel very isolated still, or I need some kind of human interaction. And that's to your point about like
people I talk to the
doing
most
that out of work.
Well, and it's funny because my best friend and I, before COVID, she's in Chicago like you, and so things are a little scary there. But she and I used to FaceTime every month or so. And now we've been mostly doing phone calls because we're both just, please don't look at me. Like, everybody's been looking at me all day, every day for weeks on end, it feels like, because she's not used to remote work at all. And so, so now we just call each other. I'll take a walk while I call her because it's a good chance for me to walk around and do something if I'm otherwise occupied.
For us, we just announced that we're going to be working remotely through January of 2021, which is January 31st is the end of our fiscal year. So it's through the end of our fiscal year. And I believe we'll be reopening our office to some extent, potentially in the middle, to allow some people either whose circumstances just like prevent them from really working from home, or just like can't, whatever, from going back in, although it'll be, I know, on a case-by-case basis. So we really, we're going to be doing this for a little while. Do you guys know what you're doing?
Well, I mean, we just got word the other day that our risk management team wants to look into ways to screen employees as they return to the office. Mm-hmm. One of our offices is in phase 2. So they're allowed to reopen on a limited basis. And we're strongly encouraging people, if you can work from home, just keep working from home. But there are cases, right, where people need or want to come into the office.
Yeah. And there's so many implications for us too as IT people, because if we start opening up the office to some people, like, what does that mean for us? Do we have to make sure that our IT team goes in there to make sure conference rooms are still working, make sure that, there's a stock of cables or adapters or whatever? And then we really have to think about like how we're going to protect our teams when they're interacting with people, because the frank truth is that we probably interact with more people than anyone else in any department in the company. We're touching people's computers, we're touching their devices, and it's going to be weird to transition to like, probably, wearing gloves all the time, wiping down computers before we start working on them, work on them, wipe them down again. I don't know. Have you started thinking about this at all, Rose, for your teams?
Yeah, I mean, I had a conversation with my boss about what we were going to do when people started going back to the office, because I was like, listen, I don't want to go back until it's better than this, right? Like until like I'm not worried about how many people there are in the space and whether or not they're wearing gloves and they're wearing a mask and all of this stuff. And he said that, he totally understood. And, we can't force anyone on our team to go back to the office. We have a couple of help desk folks who are willing to volunteer and are willing to be the person who wears the mask and wears the gloves and wipes things down and stuff like that. But, like I'm sure there's a team out there where not a single person on the IT team wants to go and wants to do it. I mean, luckily for us, like we're able to support our offices fully remotely. We have enough, remote support resources that we don't need to be in the office even to troubleshoot conference rooms. So there's that, but I think for people who aren't prepared for that question, they need to at least ask it, even if you don't know hard and fast what the answer is right now.
It certainly is reinforcing, obviously right now it's reinforcing remote troubleshooting skills, but maybe it'll also for whoever goes back into the office, maybe it'll reinforce some of their own self-service skills. They can help themselves start getting everybody on board with fixing their own conference rooms.
Right. And that's the thing, you just have to be transparent about whatever decision you make, just be transparent about it, right? Like if you're not going to require your help desk folks to go to the office, then just tell the company, like you can go into the office, that's fine, but there may not be anyone to help you. You may still have to use remote channels to get support. And so it is what it is.
And if there's only, let's say there's 10 people who decide to go back into the office, are they following the best safety standards? Like if no one's there to ensure that, or no one's policing it, like if somebody goes into a conference room, will they wipe it down? Will they tell the other people that they were there?
And that's where it really gets into like, this is a conversation that all of operations needs to have together, right? IT, finance, facilities, HR, like everybody needs to get together and sit down and say, all right, like who's responsible for making sure people are doing what we've told them to do, and what are the consequences if they don't? Like I said, we're looking at screening people for one of our offices, and the question is like, do we have somebody there who's dedicated to screening people? And if that number becomes really high, what do we do? Like, does somebody's job just become screening people to enter the office? And if you already have like a reception area in your office, like that works, but a lot of places don't. And so, yeah, it's a lot to figure out, in the midst of financial forecasting and business forecasting and all of that kind of stuff. So, but reopening is not cheap. That's the thing. It's like, I think for a lot of businesses, they might just find that if they don't need to reopen, they shouldn't, because it's not cheap to do. All the PPE that's required, the consulting that's required, right? Like sometimes
there's going to be a lot of hidden costs.
The extra manpower to watch people as they're like entering the office to make sure they're covered appropriately. Like it's a lot of hidden costs.
My smooth transition here is to conferences and certifications. Conferences in the sense that a number of conferences have been canceled, reimagined, rescheduled, etc. Things like Octane, WWDC is online. JNUC, yeah. Now, so what my experience so far has been that on the one hand, the conference is canceled or the conference is online. You're not really getting as much of a chance to network with people in person. But on the other hand, for a lot of these conferences, they're either reduced cost or free. So they're accessible to a lot more people. And you don't have to travel, you don't have to have those expenses, and you get to watch every session you want because they're recording them. You can watch them as they play. You can schedule some time to watch another one later. What have your feelings been on conferences, and what are you looking forward to? What are you sad got canceled?
I'm sad that I'm not getting enough swag.
Yeah, swag. The lack of swag is a major issue with the conferences being canceled or reimagined.
I'm running out of pens.
I'm running out of stickers. So I have stickers waiting for me in the office actually that got there at the beginning of the lockdown, and I haven't been to get them. Justine, have you been to any virtual conferences?
Yeah, I attended Octane virtually, which was actually pretty great because normally when I go in person, there's only so many sessions I can attend in person. So being able to, like Brian said, watch one and then watch one later that might have been happening simultaneously was very nice.
Well, and so I'll be honest, like the only IT conference I've ever attended was Altitude. I was supposed to go to Next this year, which was then canceled. And I was really excited about Next, mostly because you get a lot of insider Google information there that then has to trickle down through the grapevine later. But I wasn't looking forward to Next as a networking opportunity per se. The thing that I liked about Altitude is that it's connected to a community. So a lot of the people I met at Altitude, I stayed connected with, and a lot of the people I already knew from the community, I met at Altitude. And so in that way, I like the community-based conferences. And I'm very nervous about them reimagining it. Because the networking is a huge part for me, right? I spent hours talking to different groups of people and different individuals last year. And, I was looking forward to doing a lot of that again. And so whether you can or should recreate those experiences virtually is a question. I agree that it does make conferences way more accessible, especially for education and IT organizations, nonprofits and stuff who usually can't afford it. Or if the conferences just fall at a bad time, right? Conference summers is a bad time for education IT because that's exactly when they need to do all of their big projects, or when they're accepting laptop returns from students, or changing over massive numbers of users from year to year. And so I think it does make it more accessible that way, but I think you still have to block the time off, and I think that's going to be just something that's difficult for me. Attending Altitude virtually will be I am still at a conference. I am not working. My computer is open and I am on it, but I'm not opening work things right now, just like I would if I was physically there. And so that's the struggle, I think. I'm not much of a conference goer because, I don't know, giant 20, 30,000 people conferences just don't really do much for me. But
yeah, I'm not much of a crowd person myself, but I always like Altitude because it is sort of a smaller group of people, and that they're all there because they do what you do, so you can swap stories from the trenches or whatever. Whereas the larger conferences, there's often a lot more salespeople and weird vendors you don't really want to talk to.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. So Google Next, Google is a giant company with a lot of products. There's a lot of stuff I'm interested in that has nothing to do with my work. And there's a lot of people there who don't do anything near what I do. And so I feel like sometimes people go to these conferences with the expectation that everybody there is going to have something in common with them, and they don't, not necessarily. So I definitely am drawn towards more focused conferences where plus it makes them easier to position to my boss, right? If it's clearly a work conference, it's not like me just going to Google Next to get a crap load of swag.
It's not a bad reason to go though.
Not a bad reason to go. At least once, just once, which is what I was going to do.
Yeah, and the nice thing about Google conferences too is it's kind of the only time you get the opportunity to talk to their product people.
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise I feel like they're very
Very
elusive.
locked away. Yes.
Yeah, Google is almost like a giant wall that you have to climb over sometimes to like get your opinion registered. So
Yeah, it's one thing to go to something where you'll connect with people, you'll learn relevant information, high level information, tactical information, get ideas from people, that type of stuff. And it's another one to go to something that's basically like sort of a giant sales pitch for a lot, even especially for a lot of companies that host it, even if they have a lot of good sessions, it's like, here's how all of the products that we're announcing here that will be delivered in 3 quarters from now, how all of them will change your life. And it's like a lot of
yeah, and you're like, I already
sessions
have
like
the
that.
product. I don't need to be sold on it. Thank you.
I was just going to ask if there were any, I don't know, what your feelings about certifications are. I know that this is kind of like it can be very divisive, especially in IT. Like I personally, as a hiring manager, have never really taken a lot. I kind of like ignore the certification section because it doesn't really mean a ton to me about what a person's like everyday experiences or like how they interact with people and whether they would like truly fit on the team from like a customer service perspective. But I am curious kind of from a technical like from a technical standpoint if there's any certifications that either of you think are worthwhile.
I am kind of the same opinion about a lot of certifications as you, Justine. I think there are certifications that are just, they're certifications there just to make the company money. I mean, that's really like what they're there for. And there are certifications to like pump up your resume and your LinkedIn profile. And there's certifications that are like, I click through a series of buttons on my screen, like in 2 hours. And I try to like ignore most of those, or I try to at least know what they are so that I can ignore them, versus the ones that I think at least their intention is to demonstrate that somebody has technical knowledge or to prove that somebody has a certain amount of technical knowledge. Because there's some stuff where, during the interview process, you might not be able to, you don't have time to ask every question about every domain that you want to cover. And you may have an exercise that covers some of those things too, but I think it can sometimes help to attest to like what you really can do or what you have broad experience with.
So when I think about certifications though, like the ones that you like read stuff and click through, like I don't find those super valuable. I really like the ones that show like a breadth of experience in a particular product. So like we also don't really pay attention to certifications. Like great, if you have a CompTIA, like cool. I'm glad that you have that. But like if you're a certified project manager, you have to have led a project and done so many hours of work on it. So like that's a valuable certification. If you're a certified change practitioner, you also have to have managed a change project. And so there's some things that like, and like the professional collaboration engineer one, you have to study for it. Like if you're not an admin, you are going to need to study because you're not going to be able to pass it without that. But because I think they like give you a real G Suite environment and like you have to do some stuff. And like I was going to study for it for like a couple of days, but I've been adminning G Suite for over 3 years and I'm the primary admin for G Suite. So I'm pretty sure I can pass it. But like I have the Slack admin certification too, and it took me less than an hour. So I think companies really need to think about that kind of stuff when they create certifications. But also like when we hire people, I look at the certifications and if I don't recognize it, I look it up and I try to figure out what the qualification for getting the certification is. Because if it's a qualification like you took a test or you took an online course that would have taken you 10 hours or less, or you had to study for a proctored exam, or you had to commit to like so many hours of a project or like something like that, like, or if I know the platform is really expansive, right? So G Suite is one of those, Microsoft, Office 365, Azure, GCP, AWS, like those are all really in depth. And so to get those certifications like that shows some value.
Yeah, and I think there's
Mhm.
a lot of them that have multi-level ones that I think that also demonstrates something to
Yeah.
me, that if you've gone through the steps, like you've completed a certification, great, but you've completed the next level of that and maybe the next level of that afterwards. I really, it helps me believe that you know what you're talking about with this stuff. And it shows that you've committed to really learning a
Yeah.
lot of it. If it's, you know, if it's difficult. I mean, there's like 3 levels of I think Okta certifications. I mean, their test is god awful, but it's you know it's challenging, right? And so that shows you
Okta
if
is
you
a
get to the
challenging
highest
tool.
level.
That's the thing is like
Yeah,
when you have a SaaS platform that is challenging for people to onboard to, you know, where you feel compelled to offer a day's worth of training, you probably should offer a certification too, because it takes a long time to master that stuff, and also then to do the human part, which is master the complexities and the, you know, the best practices of any tool. So I've talked to a couple of people who are like getting started in IT in the last couple of years, and they always are like, oh, I'm working on this certification or I'm working on that certification. And I'm like, stop. Stop. Chances are you don't need the certification, whatever it is you're getting, because you're getting it from Udemy or whatever, right? Like it's, somebody did tell me they were getting the collaboration engineer one, and I was really impressed because I was like, holy crap, like you've never even admin G Suite before. This is gonna be difficult for you. And they were like, yeah, it is difficult. I was like, great, cool. But
yeah. There's a lot of them that you know, sort of CompTIA ones or A plus or something where it's like it's teaching how to troubleshoot. I can ask you questions, or we can talk about it, and you can see how we do things, and like that's going to tell me a lot more about your ability than like you took an exam that
well, and
told you like
the
which
same
option to
thing
try
is
first.
true for other sort of off the cuff coursework too, right? So like I have taken 3/4 of a JavaScript class. Do I script in JavaScript? No. I do not know JavaScript. I would not claim to know JavaScript because I've never completed any project using JavaScript. So, you know, that's the thing is like people just need to be cognizant of how that stuff appears because, you know, once you've been in IT for a while, you know, like I know how difficult Okta is to use. I know how difficult G Suite is to use. Like I would value those certifications, but I also know that the Slack admin one is not worth my time. So,
Mm.
you know, so
I
if
feel like
somebody
if someone was like certified in Jira, I would be very impressed. I'd be like, yes, you're hired.
well, that's the thing. It's like if somebody was said like I'm certified in Jira, I would be like, okay, but like Jira is about agile methodology. So I would rather see agile methodology. Jira is just a tool. There's a lot of thought that goes behind these.
It's very
But there's
confusing
so
tool,
many
Rose.
options. I want somebody who's like I got Agile or Scrum certified Scrum Master, and then also is like also I took some Jira technical course and I know where to change the button color for the priority label for this thing, or like I know how to install this like script
Part of the thing
tool.
about certifications too is that I'm like, you should ask yourself if your product is so complex that you feel like you need a training and a certification for it, it better be really important. Because like we just talked about the G Suite one. G Suite is a core productivity app. Without G Suite, there is no organization. There's no email, there's no files, there's no calendar, like none of it. And so like for Dialpad example, that's our phone system. If they offered a certification on how to configure Dialpad, I would be like, okay, why?
Yeah.
Like I can read a help article, thank you. But then
Install,
it
get
turned
number,
out
plug-in
that
phone.
Dialpad was complicated enough that I did actually need a certification or a training or something like that. It's not a good look for Dialpad, right? It's not, by the way, for what it's worth. But like that's the thing is like some of these tools are like, oh, we offer courses and all of our things, and I'm like, should it be this hard? Should it be that complex? Are you doing too many things? Do you think? Maybe.
Now, are you going to get the BetterCloud certification whenever it is a thing?
Yeah, actually, they already invited me to be part of the first round, I think. So.
what I like to hear. I hope our product fits into the category of it's very
Oh,
complex
it
and needs
does.
certification, but is
I've been
useful.
harping on BetterCloud for a long time that they needed to have some kind of detailed training and stuff. The certification thing, I gotta admit, I was skeptical of at the beginning, but now more and more I think about it, and knowing BetterCloud teaches you SaaSOps, and SaaSOps is a skill. Knowing BetterCloud teaches you SaaSOps, and SaaSOps is a skill. It's
Yeah, and I
a
think
function and a skill that we do.
and it brings up a good point about certifications. To me, I think when you get to the level of detail that they're valuable, are ones that teach you mastery of a product, but also mastery of like the ideas behind the product, or the like how to handle different situations. I think a lot of certifications are like basically about deployment. And so like G Suite has a deployment services one. Everyone, Okta does.
And deployment is its own animal. Like, I don't disagree
Right.
with that, but yeah, you're right. Like, I think the best certifications are the ones that teach you not only about the mastery of the product itself, but also about the underlying thought and critical thinking
The
skills.
theory, perhaps.
The theory behind the product. Just like Agile,
SaaSOps theory.
right? Agile and Scrum are methodologies and theory behind Jira, right? Like, whether or not you can configure Jira doesn't matter as much to me, but if you understand the methodology behind Agile, you'll get along with our team a lot better, because that's how we work.
Awesome. Thanks so much for this conversation. We went a little bit longer today than we normally do, but I think it's great. Like, we really talked through a bunch of stuff. So thanks again, Rose, for joining us today.
Thank you very much. Yes, it was certifications, man. That's a whole world.
Whole beast. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Please make sure to join in next time. We're going to be talking about Office 365 and G Suite behind SAML. Very exciting. And then I do a dance. Ugh, it's so muggy in New York.
He always knows when I have important meetings, because those are the ones he shows up for.
Well, we like to have the human and animal element here in the show. It makes it more real.